Hello, Elite Cohort 4. This video is to demonstrate how to do a chi-square using Excel. And so what I have done is I have downloaded from Performance Matters a bunch of students' FSA scores. And what I did in Performance Matters, you have the option to include a row that categorizes students by ethnicity or race. And so what I've done is I've included that from Performance Matters into my table. I actually we're in the process of doing a 2 by 2 chi-squared. So I deleted any student who is multiracial, any student who is Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and I only have Black and white students in my table at this point. I also took their achievement level score and I converted it to a pass or fail. So if the student had a score of 3, 4, or 5, I represented their score with a P. If they had a score of 1 or 2 on the FSA, I represented their score with an F, meaning they failed, right? So we have a pass or fail score. And what I'm going to do at this point in order to conduct my chi-square is I need to create a contingency table so I can look at my data in a 2 by 2 format. And so in order to create a contingency table using Excel, I can do something called a pivot table. So in order to do a pivot table, I'm going to highlight all of the data or all of the data in my table. And when I have all of that highlighted, I'm going to click Insert. When I click on Insert, I'm going to click on Pivot Table. And I am going to put the data point or the pivot table in my existing worksheet. So it's going to ask me for a table range, and I'm going to put my pivot table right here, and I'm just going to say OK. So I've chosen where I want my pivot table. And then what it does is it gives me the option to create a pivot table, or a 2 by 2 contingency table is what the textbook calls it. And I'm going to do that by ethnicity, or I think it's more accurately called race. So I'm going to take my ethnicity option or row, and I'm going to put it in the row column. And as you can see, it creates the first part of my contingency table. So it looks like I'm going to be seeing data compared to African American data to Caucasian data, or Black and white. Then I'm also going to look for pass or fail. So I created the top part of my contingency table. As you can see, one is fail and one is pass. I want that a little bit wider. So I'm going to widen that out because I like when the table is a little larger. Notice how I don't have any data in my rows or columns yet. I've labeled my columns, I've labeled my rows. Now I actually have to get counts of pass and fail, for each of these categories here. So what I'm going to do is I want a count of pass and fail. And so I'm going to drag my pass fail into values. And I'm going to make sure it says count. So there it does say count. And so now what I have here is I have a contingency table that tells me the number of African American students or Black students who failed the 10th grade FSA last year, or the last time I took it. This was 8th grade, I believe. So this was 2 years ago. So as you can see, I have 153 Black students who failed the FSA. I have 84 Black students who passed the FSA, with a total of 237 Black students in my 10th grade class. For my Caucasian students, I have 15 students who failed. I have 49 students who passed, and we have a total of 64 white students or Caucasian students in my 10th grade class. Again, this is not including Hispanic students, Asian students, or any other non-Black, non-white students. So now at this point, what I need to do is I need to calculate my expected values. In order to calculate my expected values, the best way to do that would be to copy my current pivot table that I just created, And then I'm going to paste it below it, but I'm going to paste special. And I'm going to paste only values. I like to look at things in a table. So I'm going to highlight the values in a table again, and I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to select all borders so that way I can see it nice and pretty. And I'm going to do the same thing here because I like to see the lines. In order to calculate the expected values, I am going to delete these or clear the contents for these 4 cells right here because those are my observed values. I want to calculate expected values. So in order to calculate expected values, I am going to clear contents. And then over here on the right, I have a formula that you can use in Excel to calculate the value that you would expect in each of these cells based on the grand totals. So in order to calculate the number of African Americans that I would expect to fail based on the total number of my sample, I'm going to go to the cell and I'm going to click equals. When I click equals, I have the formula written out over here, and I go to the column total times the row total. So my column total is 168. I'm going to put in my multiplication symbol with my keyboard, which is a star or asterisk. I'm going to go to my row total, which is 237. I'm going to put my division symbol, which is a slash, and then I'm going to divide by the grand total, 301. So column total, row total divided by the grand total. And then I'm going to hit enter. And that gives me my expected frequency for African American students who failed. Based on the numbers that I have, I would expect 132 students to fail. We had 53 fail. For the Caucasian students, I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to go to equal. I'm going to go to my column total. I'm going to put my asterisk in to multiply. I'm going to go to my row total, which is 64. And then I'm going to put my division sign in, which is my slash. And I'm going to go to my grand total. And then I'm going to hit enter. So I would expect 35.7 white students to fail. We had 15 white students fail. I'm going to go back to my African American students who I would expect to pass based on my total sample. And I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to hit equal. I'm going to click on my column total. I'm going to multiply using an asterisk times my my row total. And then I'm going to put my division sign, which is my slash, and I'm going to click on the grand total, and then I'm going to hit enter. So I would expect 104.7 students to pass who are African American. Next, I have my Caucasian total. I'm going to click on my box or my cell. I'm going to put my equal sign in. I'm going to go down to my column total. I'm going to multiply using my asterisk. I'm going to go to my row total, and then I'm going to divide using my slash, and I'm going to put in my grand total and hit enter. The next thing that we're going to do is, I don't like seeing all these decimal spaces. It drives my eyes crazy. So I want to reduce the number of decimals that I'm seeing. I'm just going to round up to the first decimal place. So I can do that by highlighting all of these cells, and I can reduce the number of decimals that I'm seeing by clicking on the decrease decimal button up here at the top. So I'm going to click that because I want to bring it down to 1 decimal place. There we go. Now, next, I'm actually going to run the chi-square. And so in order to run the chi-square, I'm looking for a p-value that is less than 0.05, right? So I'm going to mark down here and just remind myself that this is a p-value. Here, I'm going to go to the next cell, and I'm going to put in my equal sign, and I'm going to put in chi-test. Whoops, excuse me. After you put in chi-test, you have to put a left parentheses in. Then you have to go to your observed values and highlight the observed values. put your comma in, and then highlight your actual values, or your expected values, excuse me. Then once you have highlighted your expected values, you're going to close your parenthesis, hit enter, and it's going to give you your p-value. When you look at your p-value, what you're going to see is you're looking for a value greater than 0.05 to reject the null hypothesis. As you can see here, my p-value is 4.1577, and then it goes on for quite a bit there. As you can see, my p-value is much greater than 0.05. And so we have to fail to reject the null hypothesis. There is a great probability of incorrectly rejecting the null hypothesis. And so once again, that is how you would do a chi-square test within Excel. And in the next video, I'll show you how to run the same test in SPSS, and on that, which is required for your lab this week.